build your business on the proper foundation, when you hit your ceiling of achievement, Jay Papasan said this last week in Megan, I thought it was great. If you built it on a true foundation, when you hit your ceiling of achievement, instead of having to tear the house down and rebuild, it's simply a remodel. Right? And as we continue to grow in our business, and as you continue to grow as agents, if you decide you're going to get to a part where you're bringing someone new on or an assistant, if you built it with these foundations, you will remodel your business versus having to tear it down and start over. Okay? So let's talk about this on a database. Just jump into page 30. And I just share with me, when you hear the word database, what comes to mind? What do you think to yourself when you hear the word database?
Spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets, okay. What else? Contacts, good one. What else?
Location.
Say that again.
A central location.
A central location, okay. What else?
Hours of correcting bad data.
Say that again.
Hours of correcting bad data.
Hours of correcting bad data, okay. What else? Anything else come to mind?
Obsession.
Obsession,
Yeah, constantly putting people in it.
okay. Constantly putting people in it. Anything else? So what I love about what it says on page 30, it says the truth of the matter is the heart of your business is your database. Okay? I think we can all kind of agree on that. The heartbeat of your business, which is the next part, the heartbeat of your business is your regular and systematic contact with your database. So what's going to be helpful is if we take our mindset about a database and we shift it from a spreadsheet or a central location or contacts and stuff like that, and we shift it and we think that this is a living, breathing, organic part of our business. Because regardless of from where you're going to find people to build your database, everyone has to build a database, right? Regardless of what route you're taking. Right? And on this page it even says, when you hear of doctors or lawyers or anyone selling their business, what are they selling? That relationship. They may have some assets, of course, right? But for the most part, what they're selling is those relationships that they have. Okay, so page 31, I just want to go through a quick evolution of these database tools that we use. And I'm not going to get too detailed on the middle ones, but I do think it's important, particularly because we do have a number of people in our room that are high S's and high C's. It's important to kind of look at this. So in the database, and some of you, who's ever seen the video with Gary talking about the real estate, his database box? Have you ever seen that? Right, it's a great description, and basically in a nutshell what he says, he talks about when he started his business, he had a card box, and in that card box he had tabs, A through Z, January through December, and then 1 through 31 behind each month. And what happened was is he'd go out and he'd network and he would meet people, right? And so let's say we're going out and I meet Brian at a networking event. Brian then gets 2 note cards that go into the database. The first note card is all of his information, right? It's going to have his name, his contact information, how to get a hold of him, his address, everything there, and I'm going to file that alphabetically. And then based on my conversation with Brian, there's going to be a follow-up system that says I need to either contact Brian in a week or whatever it may be. That's what the action card is. So on the action card, I'll say follow up about market report. And I'll put it behind the date of when I'm supposed to do that, and then I move on to the next person. And each person in there has their information and their contact, or their action, excuse me. And so the game becomes is always pushing that action card out. So when I get to that date, I pull all the action card out that day. I look, I see it's Brian, it says follow up with market report. Great, I look up his information and I send the market report. That's basic 101 on how your database works, right? So fast forward, as it says in here, over the years, we've used spreadsheets, we've used personal information managers like ACT, database management programs like Access, and now the contact management system, which is what most people use, right? So I hear across the board, so I'd just love to hear, what do you use for your contact management system? What are y'all using in here?
Mojo and Top Producer.
Edge.
Mojo and Top Producer, eEdge. Who else? Any others?
Realty Juggler.
Realty Juggler. Anybody else? Anybody using Boomtown? Okay. Anybody else? All right, so anybody not have one they've chosen yet? Okay, so everyone's chosen one. You just don't know. Don't be shy. Get quiet on me. I'm not going to call you out. I just want to make sure I know where everybody is right now. Which one's the best one? The one you're going to use. The one you're going to use. I've used them all. Our team right now uses a mix of Boomtown and eEdge. And I'm trying very hard to get us off of Boomtown. No offense to the Boomtown users. It's very expensive. The internet leads are great as it relates to internet leads, but as far as contact management, if you're with KW, there's no reason you should just go ahead and use eEdge, right? And whatever the new one is, the new one is. Whatever one you're going to use, right? We use eEdge because honestly, the campaigns in eEdge are already done, and I like them. So in all of our locations, even the ones that we can't use Boomtown and Charleston, but all the other locations can. But we still use eEdge for our email templates, for our post-close follow-up and everything there, just because it's all set up and it's done. Okay, so again, here's what I will say. If you don't have one specific one, that's your one thing right now, is to get everyone into one and then move forward. Here's what I'll also caution you, especially for those of you that are with KW and you're kind of like, well, you know what this new one's going to do? Don't wait, because we don't know when that's going to be launched. And I will tell you, it will be a seamless it'll be a fairly seamless transition, moving from that one to the other, and it will never be a point where they're just going to cut eEdge off, right? And you don't have anything for there. So, but I have a lot of people now say, well, I want to wait and see what happens. Don't. Start using it now. Okay, that's my soapbox on your database. Just use one. Okay. So, yes.
So you said you used to kind of. How do you make sure that they're both updated with the same people? Because that's where I feel like I'm sometimes having,
right.
Like I use BombBomb and then I use this and then like how am I?
So BombBomb is really more of a system to send emails. I wouldn't use it as a CRM. The only way we can get away with using two is we have a database manager. Like we have a staff person for that. I would not recommend doing that, particularly for an individual agent. As an individual agent, pick one. If you're with KW, use eEdge. If you're not, you can actually go get eEdge through Market Leader. It's a cost, but it's not, it's still better than nothing. Just pick the one and go. And it's kind of like the lead generation source. Stop doing the research on finding the best one. Go choose one and make that the best one for you. Now, if you get to a ceiling of achievement and have to move, okay. But I think right now we're just reluctant to go all in on one. I think the biggest challenge that we have is kind of the example I gave before. We have people who have 25 prospects in the MLS, they have their Facebook friends, they have the people on their phone, they have a couple people in eEdge, and they have a couple people in their email, in Google or Gmail, and getting them all together. So that's important. Okay? So that's what we're gonna venture into that topic right now. We're gonna start on how to build that initial one, and then after lunch we'll go on how we're gonna add people to it, and then most importantly, how we're going to communicate with it to get the business, because that's the big one. Okay? Questions so far? You excited? Whoa, that feedback was good. Right? All right.
Database is not exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, but it's important, right? That's why I love teaching it. And it's funny because when in master faculty, in the final audition, they said, what would you like to teach and why? And I said this topic. And the reason why is because it's not the most fun topic, and it is the most foundational topic, right? So if we can get through it and we can just say, okay, this now makes sense. And I'm telling you today, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how you meld it all together. Where if you're doing open houses and you're doing your database and you're doing FSBOs, how do you manage all that as an individual agent? That's why I like teaching it. But you're right, it's not necessarily the most exciting topic. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes.
Would you recommend if you have like 1,000 people in your database, would you recommend going back and just trying to scrub the database and
So let's jump into that, because that's a good question. All right, so on page 32, talks about the 4 laws of lead generation. We like the number 4 when it comes to this topic. The 4 laws of lead generation. By the way, this is the outline for the rest of the day. The first law is to build a database, okay? So I'm just going to draw up here what the visual that we're going to use for the rest of the day, what the database looks like. To build a database. All right, that's the first law. We get that. The second law is to feed it every day. So we're going to put people in the database. Okay? Number 3 is to communicate with it in a systematic way, right? And the reason that we're doing that is because we're looking for leads that are in your database, which are what the stars are. So these stars represent leads. And as you get closer to the center of the database, the frequency of the leads is greater. Why is that?
Because they're closer to you.
Because they're closer to you. You have a better relationship with the people in the center of your database as it relates to business. So there's more of a chance that they're going to use you or send people to you. So that's why we communicate, because when we put people in there, the regular communicate, right? Number 3 and number 4, building a relationship, adding to your Mets, is how we get more opportunity to get these referrals. Okay? Then number 4, which is in my opinion the most important law of the 4, but the one we most overlook, is to service all the leads that come your way. Now what does it mean when it says service all the leads that come your way? What's the key word to describe what that means?
To
Follow up.
communicate.
Follow up. It's follow up. Communicate with it. So what I do on this visual now is I say, okay, when you get the lead from this, it's going to come out of your database really and go on a pipeline because it's now a lead. So I'm just going to put pipeline right here. So build the database, feed it every day, communicate with it, and then service all the leads that come your way. And we're going to go step by step on all of these. So number 1, building a database. Page 33. I love this truth. The size of your real estate business over time will be in direct proportion to the size and quality of your database. What's the key word in there? Quality. And see, it's funny. Some of you said size, actually, right? It's a mix of both, to be honest with you, right? Quality is an important one. Because you right now, is it possible to find someone who's done a decent job in building a real estate business that has a giant database of a bunch of people they don't know super well? Sure. And do you know some people that have built a decent sized real estate business with a smaller database that they know really well? Right? These are like the Brian Buffini's of the world versus the Craig Proctors of the world, right? If you're looking at the different coaching programs. But what we want to do is grow a mix of both. It allows us to build it bigger and it allows us to keep control over it. I always look at it this way: when you've got into the business or some point in a sales business, someone says, you know, real estate is all about who you know. So change that. It's actually about all about who knows you. Right? So to your question where you said I've got 1,000 people in my database, well, when I'm building my database, if I'm you, I'm going to go identify those people that fall closer to the center of the database before I start going to all 1,000 of them. But we're going to walk through that step by step. Page 34. So where do the contacts come from? I want you to take a little bit of time and just look at where it says Lake Database on there. Okay? And all of these little tributaries are great sources of business once you gain the contact information of the people from there. Why is it so important to have more contact information?
Make more contact.
You make more contact, right? That's how you're going to control the conversation. If you just have an email list of people, is that a good list to have? It's better than nothing, right? However, if I have their phone number and their address where I can send them a note and I can also call them, is that going to be better? Of course. So I want you to go around and I want you to circle areas that you have either currently getting business or areas that you want to use to get people to build your business with. Just go around that page, take like 30 seconds and just go circle anything on that page that jumps out at you. So what y'all circle? What are some things you marked off on there?
Community involvement.
Okay, community involvement. What else?
Random conversations.
Okay. What
Past
else?
clients.
Past clients, good one. Family. Yard signs. Client parties, open houses. Okay. So which one's the best one? The one you use, right? And here's what I would caution you to do. If you found that you have a lot of them on there, maybe start now reevaluating and finding out the ones from which you get the most. So when I go back, I go back to one of the biggest mistakes that we made when I first stepped back in is I did all of them. Right, like I said before, and I was doing all of them. And I was doing onesie twosie, and I'd kill the script, and then the follow-up would be terrible because I was doing new lead generation with everything else. So what you want to caution yourself is you can't pick all of them. And when we go through this, because we're going to go through a lot of those individually and come up with the system and the scripts and everything today, but pick the one that you know that you're going to be most passionate about, and the one that you've either had success with or have a pretty strong feeling about. Okay, make sense? So in the building phase, again, we're still building, this is foundational. So jump to page 35. We have two foundational categories that we talk about when it comes to the MET group. We have when it comes to our database. We have the MET group and the haven't MET group. Everybody's heard that, right? You read the red book, okay? What's the difference? You've met the METs and you haven't met the haven't METs, right? I just want to make sure it's as simple as it
That was a
sounds.
trick question.
Right? Right? So what I want